do what you want. Stop trying to make the people around you happy. It's not, maybe say not do what you want, but take care of yourself first. If you get into a plane and fly somewhere to do a safety demonstration, and they say when the masks come down and you have a little kid beside you, whose mask do they tell you to put on first? A lot of times we're always say we're giving, and we lose ourselves in the process, and we don't take care of ourselves. Well, then we actually start doing a crappier job of helping the people around us, become empty, and we burn out, or we do all the other things, right? Self-care is very important. You are a coach and you don't have a coach yourself, that's a red flag, right? Like you need to be working on yourself and pushing and grinding.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets Podcast. I'm Pedro, and today's guest is Kyle Van Ruitenburg, who leads Furiously Curious Company, working with Christian business owners and executives carrying the real weight of growth and constant pressure. Through executive coaching, he helps leaders realign success with faith, family, and personal integrity. Using a focused 10-week journal-based process, he helps uncover the beliefs driving decisions, sharpen leadership, and build clarity that impacts every area of life. Alongside coaching, his company supports strategic recruiting for growing teams and hosts honest conversations about leadership, faith, and culture through the Furiously Curious Show. Welcome to the show, Kyle.
Thanks for having me, Pedro. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. All right. And I like to rewind a bit, get back to the origin story, because every coach has a moment where they look at their life and say, yeah, I guess this is what I'm doing now. Right. So
Yep.
When was that for you, man?
Yeah, so that would have been, so I got coached myself in 2021. I was working, or 2020, I was working for a firearms company, MDT Sporting Goods, and I was vice president of business development globally. And so super cool job. It was all the sales and marketing, customer support, those aspects of the business is what I focused on, and building relationships outside of the walls of the company. And so I was gone about 2 out of every 4 weeks to somewhere in the world, selling these products, accessories for firearms to big manufacturers, to dealers, militaries, and police departments. And it was awesome. The business grew a lot in my time there. I think it was at $9 million in sales when I started there, and left when it was $55 million in sales over 7 years. And so it was a lot of fun, but I got bored quickly. And so I wanted to be CEO of the company. I thought that would be the next step. And so I went to the CEO and told him that. And he said, well, I'll help you get coached first to see if that's actually something you want to do or not. And so he connected me with Kim Addis, who's my coach at Frame of Mind Coaching out of Toronto. And it was awesome getting connected with her. Even though she was very different than me, but he said I should talk to her. And so she took me through a 10-week journal-based coaching program. And as you said in the introduction, that's the same program I'm trained on and take my guys through. So how it worked was I needed to log on to an online journaling software every day and a journal, and she could read my journal. It's kind of like a Facebook thread. And so every time I journaled, she got a notification, I journaled, and she could ask a question on the journal and leave a comment and ask a follow-up question. And so I would do that every day for 10 weeks. And I would write not just on anything, but on a specific journal prompt that she provided that changed every week for 10 weeks. So week 1 was monitor your mood. Week 2 was your beliefs. Week 3 was your relationships. And I just kept going and on a specific narrative that she was trying to gather all the information about me. And so in addition to that, there was a phone call once a week that was recorded, and I had to listen back to it. And that's really where the coaching happened. But those 10 weeks radically changed my life, which is really ironic because Kim, actually, my coach, who I love dearly, is very different than me in so many ways. She's quite a bit older than me. I think about 20, 25 years older than me. And she's liberal. I'm a conservative. She was anti-gun. I sold firearms accessories. She was Jewish. I was Christian. There were so many differences. But the cool thing, and I believe in effective coaching, is you rarely give your own opinion. As the saying goes, consultants have all the answers, coaches have all the questions. And so she really focused on her strategy. And what I believe as well is to focus on the beliefs that drive our behaviors. And when you really get to know someone through journaling and calls, you really see what people's beliefs are. And so I wasn't really aware of what my own beliefs were. I thought I knew, but when she started really pressing me, it showed there was a lot that wasn't there. And so she asked me, why do you want to be CEO? I said, I don't know. I want to move up. She goes, well, why do you want to move up? I said, I don't know. That's just what you do. She said, according to who? What do you base that on? I'm like, I don't know. And she said, are you going to enjoy the work more? I said, no, probably not. She said, are you going to get paid more? I said, no, probably not. And she said, so why are you doing this? And it came down to status. I wanted it for status. It was just that's what it was. And she's like, is that really why you're going to, pursue this opportunity? And I'm like, yeah, probably not. She's like, so this doesn't actually seem like you want something you want to do at all. I started to see more clearly that I was actually, pursuing affirmation more than I was actually pursuing my own desires of what I actually wanted. I wanted acceptance more. And so that came to the table. And so I was like, well, where does this come from? So you start to deal with that. In week 2, she said to me, what's most important to you? I said, God, and then family, and then work. And she said, okay. And again, it doesn't matter to her what I believe or don't believe. She's just trying to see what I say and then also see how I live and see if there's misalignments. And so in week 6, she goes, Kyle, I think it's bullshit. I think work's most important to you. I'm like, no, it's not. I was a good Christian boy. It's God first, of course. And I said, no, that's God's first. And she goes, well, all you do is work. Your actions show what you believe, not your words. And I'm like, that's brutal. But it was true. She goes, I don't care. I don't care what you put first. Just don't bullshit yourself. If it's work, just say it's work. Just own it. And so all of a sudden I started seeing there were so many misalignments in my life. Things I was saying because it was the right thing to say. There was the right answer versus what I was actually doing. And so I wasn't actually living according to my beliefs. And when our actions are not aligned with our beliefs, we don't have peace. And so those things started coming to the table. And one of the biggest things that came to the table, she asked me about my marriage. And because as much as it was business coaching, our personal lives are very much affected by the business and vice versa. And so she asked, how's your marriage? I said, it's okay. It's pretty good, whatever. And she said, does Nicole, your wife, know everything about you? And she goes, I'm like, no. She goes, what doesn't she know? And I told her that I'd be unfaithful in my marriage. And so she's like, okay, and what are you going to do about it? And I was like, I don't know. She goes, do you think you can have an epic marriage if, this stays secret for the rest of your life? And I said, no, probably not. So I ended up telling my wife, and it kind of broke everything, but it actually allowed me to be actually real with who I actually was, because I was putting on a lot of my life, I was putting on a facade of who I was, and I wasn't allowing myself to actually be real and live authentically. And so that set me on a journey of just radical change. And so much has changed in my life since that time. I was almost 300 pounds. I'm under 220 now. I was able to deal with a lot of the trauma that happened to me as a kid. I was in the psych ward when I was 9 years old already, and I had a really rough childhood. I'd never talked about that stuff. I'd never dealt with it. I was causing a lot of problems. Still married to Nicole. Still married. We have another kid now. I'm able to process the death of my child that we had in 2019. And so there was just a whole bunch of things, but coaching radically just helped me with those things. And so I got all the coaching training myself just to be a better leader at the company I was working at. I didn't plan to be a coach. I just really loved the process, especially of trying to investigate someone's beliefs to get and pointing that out rather than telling people what to do. It's like, well, what do you want to do? You say this and you're doing that, or do you actually want to do that? And helping people get aligned themselves with what they want. And I think that's the most powerful process to help people see what they want. Even something as practical as eating. She would say to me, stop saying at 10 o'clock when you go for lunch today, you're not going to eat a burger. When you go for lunch and and you have the menu in front of you, think about how do you want to feel in 2 hours? Like, don't do it as a resistance thing, thinking about it as like, I need to resist this, but more as like, what do I want to feel in a couple hours? And so just things like that just really helped me in that process. And so then in 2023, someone tried to hire me from a different company out of Alberta to do business development for them. And after talking with them for a while, I realized I was like, I don't think you need me at all. I think you're the business development guy. I think you need a manager, but I think you do need coaching. So how about I coach you? And so I said, you can just pay me at the end, whatever it's worth. I don't care. So I took him through the 10-week journal-based coaching program. And at the end of 10 weeks, he said, this changed my life. And he gave me 10 grand. And so another guy asked me, and I was like, it took a sabbatical from the company I was working at. I had stopped traveling. I couldn't travel anymore just for that, keep my family together. And so I was like, I'm just going to do this full time. So I ended up quitting, which was a very high paying job. I was making over 300 grand a year, and basically went to nothing. I had to sell my house. I had to start renting and stuff like that. But I was able to keep my family together and do what I love doing, and help guys on do the same thing themselves. So there are a lot of business owners. Yeah, I can get to that, but yeah, that's kind of how I got into the coaching I do.
First of all, we're talking about the origin story, the CEO telling you to get coaching. I mean, that's wild card, and also an awesome one. I didn't see that coming. I'm not sure if that's often, if that happens a lot, but that is actually helping you. And I was thinking he was trying to get rid of you, because most people do that. It's like, this guy's trying to get my job. He wants to be the CEO. I'm already the CEO. So I think he does have a lot of integrity, and I did like the way he introduced you to coaching. And then we got to the true coach that stepped in your way, which I also love. The fact that I would say it's just not having all the answers and start peeling off your own true self with the right questions. I love that. That's just true coaching. And on top of it, sorry about your loss, about the kid you had in Paris. So I can't even fathom that. I have 2 boys. So moving forward, we're talking about the business, such a different way to step in, yeah, and such a unique way. In a way, you're using the same stuff you went through, right? The journal coaching, which I think it's awesome. Sounds like a great idea. And then it started kind of organically, like you're offering that, and hey, you pay me whatever, and then hey, here's 10 grand because that really landed, that really helped me. So that brings me to my follow-up question is, when did it shift from I'm helping people, because that's the space coaches, a lot of coaches, they lose themselves, like, hey, I'm going to help people, to I'm building a real business around this. When you see that shift happening?
Okay, so the question is, when did I switch from just coaching to actually building a business?
Exactly.
When I quit and I had bills to pay. Like I knew that this was my only revenue stream, which ironically I struggled with initially when I was still at MDT and I was started coaching already. It was quite easy for me to sign clients because I didn't need the money. I was making good money already. And so there wasn't this like need, and that didn't come through. And when I quit, all of a sudden I needed the money, and that really came through as well. And so I actually started to struggle after that because I didn't know, I felt guilty calling someone up and saying, hey, how are you? Because before, if I did that as a buddy and it wasn't a firearms company, they knew I didn't have an ulterior motive. I was actually asking, how are you? And now every time I was talking to people, they were like, is he trying to coach me? Or at least that was the narrative that I was telling myself, and I needed the money. And so you start having this weird pressure. And so I actually started pulling away, and I was also working on myself still. And so I actually struggled initially quite hard for that reason. And it's a lot harder to sell yourself than it is to sell, a product or something else. But I did someone mentioned it to me and said, if you had the cure to cancer, would it be moral for you to withhold that from somebody? And the obvious answer is no, right?
Right.
And so if you believe in what you're offering, is it moral for you to withhold that from people? If you believe it's actually going to help them, do you believe in your product? And the obvious is no. And so instead of that, really helped my mind switch from thinking of like I'm taking versus I'm actually still helping, and I'm, this is a business, and I need to make a profit. And so I just took that approach more. It was a lot easier for me to create sales that way and understand, hey, what value am I offering, and trying to articulate that to the clients. And then it just started to keep going. I just didn't give up. So I had a podcast, and I started advertising on the podcast, and that helped. I hired a coach to work for me. Was a mentor of mine. He was in the U.S. Marines as a colonel. Flew F-18s, was in the Special Forces, but he's an older guy, later 50s. And so he coaches for me now. And so I can get clients for him, and then offering recruiting services as well. And so it's more just I think the reason it worked is because I didn't give up. I just didn't, you just it's kind of like the burn the ships method, right? I think there's that famous example of these guys trying to conquer this island, and every time a new group of guys comes to conquer the island, they can't beat them, and they go back on their ships and they take off again. Until one guy came and said, as soon as they landed, he told his guys, burn the ships. They're like, what? Burn the ships? If we're leaving on their ships. We're not, and it just cuts off the possibility of quitting. And I think, especially with coaching, people getting into it and stuff like that, is that you are kind of dipping your toe in the water. You're like, or you have a backup plan and stuff like that. You gotta be all in. You gotta just, yeah.
Yeah, like there's no plan B. I think I remember, I think it's a story in The Art of War of Sun Tzu. It's like he tended to have his army at the back of a cliff or a mountain. So they had like no plan B, right? It's all in or nothing. So yeah, I think it's somewhat to an extent something like that. Now, after you got rolling, right, Kyle, who are the people that kept showing up? The ones you realize, okay, these are my people.
Yeah. So it's very much so I grew up a Dutch Reformed. It's like a Christian, it's just Christian. But it's people that immigrated from Holland in the 50s and built communities all over North America. And so how I grew up, and there's just very specific cultural things that are nuanced that I understood. And so those are the kind of guys that keep showing up. And it's not just restricted to that, but it's people that grew up with faith somehow, like in a Christian church, and care about family values, want to go do the right thing, be an honorable guy, be a good family dad, and love business, want to make money and make something out of it. And one of the things that I noticed in that demographic is it's like 20 guys from 25 to 45 years old, is that they're actually quite lonely and isolated. And there's 4 common things that I see in these guys. And the first is that they don't trust the government. They think people used to trust the government to a certain degree, but there's very low trust in the government. They don't have much hope for the future. They think the world's going to shit. So no matter how hard I work, like what's the actual point? They don't trust the church. They grew up Christian. They probably go to church, but they don't trust the church. They think 80 or 90% of what they grew up with in church is bullshit. They would never talk to a pastor or an elder about what they're struggling with. They don't, they feel like they have to be perfect around those guys. And then the fourth thing is that they had absentee dads. So dads that might have been physically around, but not emotionally present for them. And so there's no connection at all. And so now you're 35 years old and you feel like you should have your shit together, but you don't. So you feel shame. So you isolate more. But in the one area that you do know you can get value is in your job, right? In your business. So if I work really hard, you can see the results of it and you get something out of it. And so that's where a lot of guys spend their time. It's like, why do guys like mowing the lawn? Because you can see the result, right? Like you can see the difference and that feels good. But they don't actually know how to show up for their family. They don't actually really know what it means to be a good dad. They don't know how to deal with conflict. So they're often conflict avoiders or people pleasers. And that causes a lot of problems for them. And so once you can start peeling things back and realize, one thing to add to that, they don't actually believe in themselves that much either, because their dads never believed in them. And so they're not really confident people. And because these 4 things that I mentioned, the government, the future, the church, and their dads, those are things that give you security in life, right? They're pillars. And so now you're kind of floating, but you don't really know what you believe yourself either. And beliefs drive behaviors. So if you're really sure about a belief, it's really easy to behave a certain way. If you were taught your whole life, new John Deere tractors are the best tractors in the world, and then it gets hammered into you. Well, when you're 25 and you're a farmer, there's not a lot of stress in deciding what tractor you're going to buy, right? Because But if you've been told that none of them are really good and you're not really sure, then when you're 25, you have to figure out what you believe so you can make your choice on what tractor to buy, right? So strong beliefs make it easier to decide on how to show up and how to behave. And so what the coaching really does is it helps guys figure out what they actually believe. And because a lot of guys are just doing what other people say they should believe. When it comes to the business, you should do this in your business and that in your business. And they're kind of like, oh, what do I do? Or in your family or this or that. And so what the coaching pulls back the layers of, hey, well, I'm not really sure what I believe about a whole bunch of things. I actually have no beliefs. I just, and then you allow them to start, solidifying what these beliefs are. And so, it's super powerful. And, it was interesting. My coach challenged me really hard to get divorced. I separated 5 times over 3 years. And she's like, why don't you get divorced? Why are you in this marriage? And stuff like that. And so I'm really happy she did that because it solidified my belief I wanted to stay. And it made it more concrete. So that's usually when we challenge a belief, that's what happens. We realize it's not true and we have to switch our beliefs or realize it's more true than we initially realized, and that belief gets more solid. And then it's a lot easier to then show up differently. And so that's really what the coaching focuses on. And so these guys start to wake up and be the man that, they've always were, but was just covered with many layers of should, instead of like things that they actually wanted.
Interesting. Sounds like they're following someone else's playbook. They didn't even wrote themselves, but they're like, hey, it sounds like this is the next thing to do, right? Like you mentioned in your own career. So yeah, and when you start peeling that off, it shows true intention. What are you aligned with or not aligned with to keep building your own path? Now, okay. Now we're talking about 45-year-old guys that do have some faith background, but I want to understand the marketing aspect to it. Okay. Now a little bit into the business side. So how do those guys usually find you?
Yeah. So it's mainly through my podcast. So in 2019, I started a podcast called The Furiously Curious Show way before I started coaching. And I just, I've always been a pretty curious guy. And so I want to know why people believe what they believe. So when I see someone with pink hair, an average conservative guy might be like, you're nuts, like you're crazy. But I want to know how they got there. Like genuinely, I'm curious. Like what were the chain of events in your life that made you get to that spot and like show up the way you do now? I'm just a curious person. And I think it's really important to be able to have conversations and learn that way too, is to get other people's viewpoints. And so I started a podcast to do that, just to share those beliefs. And then, so when I quit MDT, I needed to do marketing for my coaching to grow it. And I didn't want to talk into a camera just blindly and answer and give coaching tips or this or that. It just seemed inauthentic to me. And so I started an additional show to the Furiously Curious Show called The Briefcase in the Barn, which is me and my buddy Gary, who's a business farmer guy. And I said, we're just going to talk every week for a half hour about whatever we want to talk about. No rules. I'm not going to care at all who listens and who likes it. But I know if I do that, whoever does listen will be the most like me, because otherwise they wouldn't listen, right? Like we resonate, we get closer and attract to people that are the most like us. And so I know if those people listen, those are also the people I want to coach the most. And so I just started doing a weekly show, and literally that was my rule. I was not going to chase views or likes or anything else like that. And so now I have about 750 downloads every week on specifically that talk show. And that's an opportunity to build trust with the audience, because I'm very open about my own failures and wins and everything else like that, everything I believe. And so as you build trust with the audience, you also have an opportunity to talk about your coaching then and the services you offer. And so that's basically that exclusively the way I market my coaching and recruiting.
Interesting. All right. Now let's talk business for a second. People find you, right, through your podcast, for example, like you told me, and they resonate with your work. And eventually they want to know what working with you actually looks like. And everyone builds their own coaching business a bit differently. So when someone actually becomes a client, right, what does that experience look like right now?
Yeah. So first we have a discovery call to see if, why they're there, why they're interested. And in the discovery call, you just ask a ton of questions again, like what's going on in their world and what's helping them win and what are the struggles. And you try to add value in that call right away and see how you can help them. And in that call, I often share a little bit of my own story and why I do what I do. And then I ask if they want to move forward. So I charge for my program $15,000 for 10 weeks. And if they want to go ahead with that, then they pay up front. I ask for full money up front because I want these guys to be all in. I don't want to piss around. I want to go hard at this. And so if they commit to that, then I do an intake call, which is just asking about 20 questions about all the different, like more detailed things of their life, like what kind of family they came from, how many siblings, relationships, faith, whatever that are important to them, what they hope to get out of the coaching experience. And then we just explain the software to them, show them the software, how it works. And then we just pick a Monday to start. And we just give her. So they just start journaling. I start responding, have a call every week. And then it just goes on for 10 weeks.
Interesting.
And then a lot of times after 10 weeks, they stay on one call a month or 2 calls a month. But yeah, it's those 10 weeks that really give you extreme awareness, really. That's what I would summarize people get out of it, is extreme awareness. What do you actually want, and where do you actually want to go? And what do you actually believe? Because you need a foundation to start off of to move forward. like one of the things I did to rebuild my marriage after I was unfaithful is do polygraphs. My counselor told me to do polygraphs, lie detector tests, to prove that I wasn't bullshitting and I was telling the truth. Well, why is that important? Because my wife wanted a foundation to work from. She wanted to know what the bottom was. Once you have a foundation, once you know the truth, you can go up. But until you know what you're working with, it's really hard to know how to go up, because you don't know what you're building on. And so that's what the 10 weeks really does, is it gives you that foundation. It's like, gives you the truth of like, okay, now you actually know what you want. So now you can build up from this and where you actually want to go. Because usually what we say we want is not what we actually want.
Okay. Now, your work seems pretty hands-on, Kyle. We're talking about the journal. We're talking about the coaching sessions, right? So how do you think about capacity so you don't stretch yourself too thin?
I don't really think about it too much. I would say I'm coaching right now 6 guys in maintenance. I've no one in the 10-week program right now. My coach Trey has a couple guys that he's working with. I have a lot of other things going on. I record a couple podcasts a week. I do recruiting. Capacity, probably the hardest thing sometimes is just the mental side of things. But yeah, I'm not sure if I think about capacity too much. I just want to keep going and growing. So
okay. And I want to tap into your experience a little bit, because every coach wrestles with at some point is pricing, right? And how to package their work, especially in the early days. Like, am I charging too much? Am I not charging enough? That type of mentality. So how do you think about it today? And were there any lessons along the way that shaped how you landed where you are right now?
Yeah, pricing is very funny. Like I remember in 2018, I had to sell some kittens that were born in our house. And so I went on Craigslist and I looked at the most expensive kittens you could find were $100. So I listed mine for $200 and I sold them right away, because some people just want the best stuff, right? And so I knew I wanted to work with the top level guys. I want to work with executives. I want to work with A players. I want to work with guys that are already successful. I want to work with guys that know everything already. That's my character and stuff like that. So I know I needed to price according to that. And then the second thing was, I have a lot of experience. I've traveled the world for 5, 6, 7 years. And then I had a few other jobs before that in purchasing and operations and shipping and receiving. And so a lot of experience seeing a ton of businesses and building a business. And so an average executive makes, $250,000 a year. And so if you then say to a business owner, hey, you get to have an executive level person on your team, in your corner for a few weeks or longer, 6 months, whatever else like this. And it only costs you the price of, small amount, a tenth of that even, it's very comparable, right? If you're going to go hire executive level person, $250, a year, or you can get coaching for, let's say it's the 10-week program, and then, some maintenance coaching is $30,000, it's actually relatively cheap. And so it's just being able to communicate, that value that way. So that's kind of how I look at it. But it's hard. It's like the price I charged $15,000 US. I did that from day one, after I got my first guy to just say, hey, I'll pay you whatever it's worth at the end. And it does give people a sticker shock and initially. But I don't want to really work for less. And I know the value I give them at the end as well, right? When you start understanding, you've radically changed someone's life, or the coaching program and the coaching has radically changed someone's life for the better. And now they have a much better marriage. Now they have much better relationship with their kids. They're taking care of their health. Their employees actually know what's wrong versus like him avoiding dealing with the issues. So he's actually making better strategic decisions when it comes to sales or cost savings, whatever else like that. It's monumental. So it's worth way more than just, a small amount of money. And one of the most powerful examples that I talk to people about when it comes to this is, if you see a Lamborghini on the side of the road that's for sale, or a Ferrari or a nice car, and it's listed for $15,000, you see a big sign that says 15,000 or 10,000, you're probably not going to stop. The engine's probably missing or something.
Mm-hmm. Something's wrong. But if you see $250,000, you're going to stop, not because you're going to buy, because you want to see this awesome car, right? And so a lot of people price themselves like
a $10,000 Ferrari.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. Considering you have a unique way of coaching, right? We're talking about a almost daily journal
Yeah.
coaching that you reply to them, follow-up questions, all of that. And then we have the one-on-ones. So do you think the pricing point helps you with the accountability aspect? Like if this was too low, people were like, I'm not going to respond to that daily. I don't have enough skin in the game, or this is too much. This is too much work. Do you think the 15K grounds them up to, hey, let's really do this? Do you think that's a factor?
It's huge. Yeah, it's very big. I've coached a few people for free through my program just because it worked out that way. I wanted to get some practice. There was a few people I was like, oh, this makes sense to do this. And it is way different than someone who pays. Way different because they're not coming. They have nothing on the table, right? Like they have nothing to lose. You need to have something to lose for things to be effective. And so, it makes a very big difference versus not having anything on the table.
Interesting. Now, Kyle, I'm curious about where you're taking all this, right? Looking ahead, where do you see the business going? Are you thinking about scaling, hiring, or is there a next step you're excited about?
Yeah, I'm starting to do some live events. That's kind of exciting. I want to hire a few more coaches and get people to coach for me more on the frame of mind coaching methodology. But there's not specific revenue goals I have necessarily. I love what I do. I want to change people's lives. If I could have a number of guys necessarily I want to change, some people say I want to change, 1,000 people a year, but I don't have to get any of that. I just, keep trying to communicate what I do now and the value I offer. And I did 300K last year, my third year of coaching. I think it's probably possible I get to $1 million in sales in the next 3 to 4 years. But yeah, who knows? It's a crazy world out there. So
yeah. And of course, whenever we're aiming towards the next chapter, always something we're refining in the present. So what are you currently trying to improve or tighten up in your business right now?
Yeah, I think my biggest weak point is administration. And it's the back end of things. It's the emails, it's the follow-ups. It's like when I worked at MDT, I had an accounting team. I had a marketing team. You had an assistant. You have all this stuff. When you go work for yourself, it doesn't matter. Like you got to pay the phone bill. You got to talk to the tax man. You got to figure out how to do your finances. You got to do all of it. And so there's a few areas like that I just don't like doing. And so, and struggle with. So it's probably getting an administration person just to help on the back end more, and then maybe getting a specific salesperson to do outbound to find more coaching clients.
Okay, yeah. The structure behind corporate America, sometimes it helps a lot. And when you're a solopreneur, that reeks that you actually sometimes need help. So that makes sense. Now, I want to tap into your experience for a second, because people listening can really benefit from this. You're so open to sharing. So you've been in the game long enough to hear all kinds of business advice, some that stick, some of that really doesn't. So what's one piece of business advice you hear all the time that you think is so overrated or misunderstood?
You need to always be growing, otherwise you're dying, or never say no to work. There's work you need to say no to. There's people I do not want to coach. And even if they paid me a lot of money, I would say no. You need to know what you do and why you do it, and not just be driven by your customer. Innovation is important, but it's more, a lot of people say, if I'm not growing and getting more businesses and saying yes to things, well, then I'm dying. That's just not true. I think it comes from people that are just stagnant in what they're offering people and not, trying to continue to offer value, and then you're going to go backwards. You need to be, continuing to offer value in a clear way. Your business and your work should not run your life. You run your life. And so a lot of people allow their business to run their life. And so it should be the other way around.
Yeah, the business should serve you and not the other way around, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And on the flip side, what's a piece of advice you wish more people actually took seriously?
Do what you want. Stop trying to make the people around you happy. It's not, ultimately, if maybe say not do what you want, but take care of yourself first. If you get onto a plane and fly somewhere to do a safety demonstration, and they say when the masks come down and you have a little kid beside you, whose mask do they tell you to put on first? Not the kid's mask. They tell you to put your own mask on first, right? And it's a little bit counterintuitive and like, well, aren't we supposed to help the kids first? Well, if you do it that way, you're going to be passed out by trying to put the kid's mask on. So we all have to be healthy ourselves for us to help the people around us well. And so a lot of times we're always say we're giving, and we lose ourselves in the process. So we don't take care of ourselves. Well, then we actually start doing a crappier job of helping the people around us. And so we have to put on our own mask first, take care of our own stuff first, practice what we preach. And I think that's probably the most powerful piece of advice, because otherwise we just become empty and we burn out, or we do all the other things, right? Self-care is very important. I think if you are a coach and you don't have a coach yourself, that's a red flag, right? Like you need to be working on yourself and pushing and grinding.
I love that. And if someone listening wants to connect with you or follow your work, Kyle, where can people find you and connect with you?
Yeah, so my website is furiouslycurious.co. And you can contact me there on my social media as well. Furiously Curious CO is my social media handles, and my personal pages are on there as well. Or you can email me, kyle@furiouslycurious.co, and connect with me that way. I'd be happy to hop on a call. I do free discovery calls for an hour for people that want them. So
okay, there were a few things you shared today that really stayed with me. I would say that quote, consultants having all the answers and coaches have all the questions. I think we had a lot of people that move out from consultancy to coaching, and sometimes that's a hard hat to get rid of, and being able to stop giving answers and start asking the right questions. So I think that's a very powerful reminder. So like you said, in a way, like behavior is a language, right? It's not just about telling X, Y, and Z. It's about acting like it, So I think that's also a very important reminder. Overall, just being super vulnerable. I mean, it sounds like you brush through things that are like hard traumas for most people. Like, oh, I wasn't faithful. Oh, I lost a kid. I was doing stuff that really didn't resonate with who I am. And you browse through it like it's nothing. So it tells me you own it and you kept moving forward, which I think is a key asset for a coach, is have that skin in the game, not just talk about hardship, but live through it. I would say also, one thing you mentioned about the curing cancer, right? What would you stop yourself if you knew what you had as something really precious? It always brings back me to sometimes an analogy I have. It's like, oh, I'm reaching out. And sometimes we see a lot of coaches reaching out and they're like, oh, I'm annoying this person. Oh, should I call them? Or should I do, reach out through email? But at the same time, I think of a family that has a kid that is addicted, and they won't reach out for the family to help them, but you need to know you have something special and you can help that person. And sometimes it's not the first, the second, but if you can actually help them and you believe that, you're potentially saving a life, right? So that's a great reminder. And take care of your own stuff first. I always I had people I met that were not great parents at home, but they were always looking to serve the community. But hey, look at your own households first, right?
Yes.
If your kid is getting the attention he needs, and don't try to be a superhero if you're not one at home, I think at the end of the day. Now, I appreciate what you do, Kyle, and I appreciate being here and sharing so openly today. It was great having you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Pedro. It's cool to see what you do and share light on coaches. So thanks for doing what you do.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.